Hello, bookish friends. My name is Gail, and I am the Fiction Bookworm. Today, I wanted to start my new segment, sort of new. I kind of did this in November and December a little bit, but this is really the official launch of my new release segment, which I'm going to do early in the month or maybe just before the month. And so I wanted to get this recorded so that I can, you can be on the lookout for some of these books. So this is my new in January segment where I am covering 3 new releases in historical fiction. So this month they're all historical fiction. I imagine a lot of months they will be because that is what I like to read the best. And when I'm looking at things on NetGalley, that kind of tends to be what I pick is historical fiction. So I do sometimes pick other things, and sometimes those end up on my DNF pile. I had one for December that was a suspense, which I'd like to finish at some point, I think, but at the time when I started it, I just wasn't in the mood for suspense. So, but historical fiction, unless it's something that's too dark, I'm usually in the mood for. So I have 3 new books that come out in January. I was thinking I had 4, but I could only find 3 as I'm recording today. So I guess that's what I'll cover. I did actually read 4, but the one was a DNF and I did not like it, so I'm not going to talk about that one because I only wanted to talk about recommended books. So the first one is called Whispers of War by Julia Kelly. And this book is coming out January 14th of 2020. The publisher is Gallery Pocket Books, and it is the story of it's a dual timeline story in that there are 2 point of view characters. One is modern day. And actually, there's not 2 point of view characters, I'm sorry. There's 4 point of view characters, but there's 2 storylines. One is kind of a modern day. I would call that more like a framing story, like I talked about with Suzanne Meissner, and the most recent book I read by her, Secrets of a Charmed Life, where there's a modern day story, but it really just kind of serves as a frame, sort of in between the changing of the point of view characters in the World War II story. And so she's doing a little research on her grandmother. Her grandmother recently passed away and has a necklace, and she goes to England to visit her grandmother's friend who gave her the necklace and to learn more about her grandmother because her family has decided to postpone her grandmother's funeral for like 6 months or a year or something. And she's been chosen to write the eulogy. So she wants to do some research about her grandmother. And so then we go into the World War II story, and it's really the story of 3 friends, and each of them has a point of view story to tell in the novel, and it's basically the same storyline, but we kind of get it in 3 different chunks as each of the women tell part of the story. It's the story of Samantha's grandmother, who was German, and she came to England as a child and went to an English boarding school and made 2 very close friends. And so these 2 friends, as World War II is sort of unfolding in England, much like the U.S. did with Japanese people, and I've even heard very recently, I think maybe even they did this with some Germans, and put them in like concentration camps, basically. Yeah, I just heard someone talking about camps in like Alabama or someplace where I think they might have kept some German prisoners of war in America during World War II. But they did this in the UK, and so this is kind of at the beginning of the war. And her grandmother was German, and her boss is being investigated for helping German immigrants enter the country. And the kind of immigrants that he's helping are Jewish immigrants. And her grandmother's friend is actually also helping her boss in this endeavor. Her friend Hazel is married and works for a matchmaking agency. And so Hazel helps Marie's boss to match these Jewish immigrants with a spouse in the UK so that they can get like a fiance or a marriage visa and come to the US or come to the UK to be safe. And so the British intelligence is investigating this to find out what's going on here. Why are all these Germans coming here? And so because of this, Marie is possibly in some trouble and might end up in one of these camps. And she's living with her aunt and uncle and cousin who are all German but had immigrated to the UK. So they're all kind of in danger of ending up in one of these camps. So it's really kind of this, it's the story of these three friends, how they deal with what's going on in World War II, and how they all try to help Marie to make sure that she doesn't end up in one of these camps. I love that this story it's a story of friendship. Because that's the main point of the story, is really the friendship of the three ladies. So I recommend it. I would say it was probably a 4-star book for me. There was nothing spectacular about it, but it was a very solid World War II story. Not really any romance, mostly a little bit, but that was just kind of a side note, and really kind of at the end of the book to kind of give you a finished feel, I think. But yeah, it was just a great story about friendship in World War II. It wasn't overly scary. You know, there was a little bit of tension about will she end up in the camp, but excuse me, nothing on the level of The Nightingale. So I liked it. Yeah, so overall I would say it's a solid 4-star read, and I recommend it if you're interested in World War II historical fiction, and if you especially love stories about friendship. I highly recommend it. It's hard to find good friendship books, and this was definitely one of them. All right, the next book I want to talk about is also coming out on January 14th. This is one that I am really excited about. So this book would be on my top of most anticipated reads of 2020 if I hadn't already read it, because I really like the authors and I'm excited about the book. And this is All the Ways We Said Goodbye by Karen White, Lauren Willig, and Beatrice Williams, the three W's. I have mentioned a couple of their other books that they've written together before, and this is the third one in their series, and it is set in Paris, and it revolves around a World War II story. So the novel is set mostly in Paris, but also in France, and it is about 3 women who are all tied together by a necklace or a family talisman kind of thing, and you know, sort of a joint history. So it's a World War I story, a World War II story, and then sort of mid-1960s. And so 2 of the characters are mother and daughter, and the third one is the wife of a British spy in World War II, who is connected to the World War II storyline. So, excuse me. I really like the story. There is a really interesting dynamic between the women because they don't really know each other, even the mother and daughter, because the mother died when the daughter was very little, during World War II. I think of the Spanish flu, influenza. So it's a really interesting story, and it was really good. I liked all 3 of the storylines. I wish I knew which author wrote which storyline. That's always the big mystery for me. But all three I felt like were really solid stories that I was very interested in. They all kind of come to a crescendo at the same time. So by the end, you're kind of like, oh, I know what's going to happen, or I don't know what's going to happen, or, you know, I hope this all turns out well. So it was really good. I highly recommend it. It is a 5-star rating for me. So in addition to being what would be my most anticipated read of 2020, it really fulfilled that anticipation. I rank it 5 stars. The 3 Ws are going to be on tour in January. I am hoping to go and see them and get a copy of the book signed. Even though I read it already, I'm going to buy a copy so that I can have them sign it. I'm really excited about this book. The third book comes out January 21st, and it's called The Vineyards of Champagne, and it is by Juliet Blackwell. And this is also sort of a dual timeline. It's really a contemporary story where it's intersecting with a World War I story. So we do have short chapters with a POV character during World War I. We also have a lot of letters from some of the characters during World War I. So like most dual timeline books, there's sort of, it's usually one side is very story heavy and the other side is very light. And this one, unlike some historical fiction novels that are very heavy on the history part and not so much on the contemporary, this one's flipped. So this might, actually wouldn't call this one a historical novel, even though I did at the beginning of this video. I would actually call it a contemporary novel, and you just kind of dip into the past, but it does have historical elements. I really love this book. This one was also a 5-star read for me. One of the main themes of the book is grief, because the main character was widowed, and you know, she's dealing with the grief of her husband. She's dealing with some disappointments in him because of the financial situation that he got her into. She's dealing with how to pick up and change her life. You know, she's kind of in a career that she ended up in because of him. And it's not really what she wanted to do or planned to do, and she just needs to start her life over. So she's working for a wine importer in Napa Valley, California, and her boss sends her to France over like New Year's in January on a buying trip, and she's trying to recruit new vineyards for them to import into California. And it's like the slow season, and so it's a time when a lot of vintners actually have off and sometimes they're often on vacation during that time, because that's like the one time of year that they can get away. And so there's really not a lot of people that she can go and see. So it seems kind of like this trip is sort of a secret ploy for her boss to allow her to just have some time away from home, away from her life in California, to just really, you know, think about her life, what she wants to do, you know, recover from her grief, you know, just to have some time to herself. And so she does that. There is a bit of a romance in the story. She does meet a man. That's really more in the second half of the story. And it's also very light on the romance. But I really liked it. I loved, this was a book where there were so many passages that I highlighted that were great quotes. One of the things that they talked about in the book was how much women influenced the production. Takes place in the Champagne region, and so how much the production of champagne changed after the wars, World War I and World War II, because of women. Because, you know, they often were widowed during the wars, and they had to take over the family, you know, wine production. And so, you know, they call them like the widows of Champagne, and they had such a heavy influence on the production of wine. And so I thought that was really great. It was so interesting. And it was about grief, but it was really kind of in an empowering way, an encouraging way to kind of show like this is something that you move through, that you're never going to forget. It's going to change you forever, but it can also make you a stronger person. And I really like that a lot. And I love the story. The sense of place was very strong, which I love. It was one of those books that felt like a vacation in France, like one of my favorite, comfort read, self-soothing read tropes is Vacation in France. And so it was definitely that for me at a time when I needed some self-soothing. So great book, 5 stars. I highly recommend it. I'm not sure which book I liked more, The Vineyards of Champagne or All the Ways We Said Goodbye. The Vineyards of Champagne was really a surprising love for me. I wasn't expecting that book to be everything it was. It sounded to me like a fun vacation in France book, but it was so much more. And so that one was just surprising. And so I think that kind of even pushes it to slightly like 5-star plus for me because I wasn't expecting it. So these are 3 great books that are coming out in January. I hope that you will look for them, maybe pre-order them, but definitely give them a look and let me know what you think of them. If you decide to buy any of them or read any of them, let me know. I'd love to hear what you think about them, whether you like them or not, and why you decided to pick them up. So I will talk to you later. Happy reading!